Good evening, my dear. I am the Fool, the first card of the tarot, the zero at the beginning of everything, the one who stands at the edge with a light step and an open heart. And tonight, you will fall asleep with me as I gently guide you toward rest. Before I tell you anything else, I want to clear away a misunderstanding that has followed my name for centuries. Because until you understand who I actually am, you will not be able to receive what I have come to offer you tonight. I am not stupid. I am not naive in the way that word is usually meant. I am not someone who has failed to learn what the world considers important. I am the Fool in the oldest and most sacred sense, the one who has learned something that most people spend their entire lives trying to unlearn their way back to. I have learned how to begin, how to stand at the edge of the unknown without the paralysis that knowledge sometimes brings, how to take the step that cannot be taken perfectly and take it anyway, with lightness, with trust, with the quiet confidence that the road reveals itself to those who walk it. In the traditional image of my card, I stand at the edge of a cliff, one foot already lifted, face turned toward the open sky, a small white bundle of belongings tied lightly over one shoulder, a white dog at my heels, a single white rose in my hand. People have looked at this image for centuries and seen danger. They see the cliff and they think, doesn't he know he's about to fall? But I want you to look more carefully. The foot that is lifted is not stumbling, it is stepping. The face turned toward the sky is not oblivious. It is choosing, deliberately, consciously, to orient toward possibility rather than toward fear. And the small bundle I carry, notice how lightly I carry it. Everything I own fits in one small pack, tied to a single stick, balanced on one shoulder. This is not poverty. This is a philosophy. I carry only what I actually need, not what I think I might need someday, not what I am afraid to leave behind, not the accumulated weight of every past version of myself that I am still lugging forward out of habit. Only what is genuinely useful. Only what genuinely serves the journey. And tonight, I want to ask you something that I have found to be one of the most important questions a person can ask themselves at the end of a day. What are you carrying into sleep tonight that you do not actually need? Not what you might need tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow, and it will bring its own provisions. But tonight, lying here in the quiet, what are you holding that could be set down? What weight have you been carrying that has been so familiar for so long that you have forgotten it is a weight? I want to be your guide in setting it down. Not permanently, not unless you decide that is what you want, but for tonight. For these hours, for the duration of this particular journey into rest and renewal. Let me tell you something about the number I carry, the number 0, because it is not simply the absence of something, it is one of the most profound mathematical discoveries in human history. For most of human civilization, 0 did not exist as a concept. The ancient Greeks, Those brilliant, rigorous thinkers who gave the world geometry and logic and philosophy had no number for nothing. Their mathematics could not accommodate the idea that emptiness could be quantified. Zero was developed in India, in the work of mathematicians like Brahmagupta in the 7th century, and it transformed everything. Without zero, there is no algebra. Without zero, there is no calculus. Without zero, the positional number system, the very system that makes modern mathematics possible, cannot function. Zero is not nothing. Zero is the space that makes everything else possible. Zero is the placeholder that gives all other numbers their value. Without zero between 1 and 10, neither 1 nor 10 means what it means. And I, the fool, carry zero as my number because I am that space. I am the beginning before the beginning, the empty vessel that can receive anything, the open slate on which any story can be written, the pause before the first note of music that makes the music possible. Sleep is your zero. Sleep is the space between one day and the next that gives both days their full value. Without the zero of sleep between them, the days blur into each other, losing their distinctness, losing their freshness, losing the quality of beginning that makes each new day feel like a genuine new day. Tonight you are entering your zero, the space between, the pause that makes the music possible, the nothing that is not nothing, but is instead the precondition of everything. This is not empty time. This is the most structurally important time of your day. This is the zero that gives tomorrow its value. I want to share with you now something about the nature of beginnings, which is, after all, my speciality, that I think will change the way you think about sleep. Most people think of beginnings as starting points, the moment when something that was not yet becomes something that is. The first day at a new job, the first sentence of a new book, the first step on a journey you have not taken before. But in my experience, and I have been the energy of beginnings for as long as human beings have been seeking symbols for what they feel, a true beginning cannot happen without a genuine ending. Not a dramatic, announced ending, not necessarily even a final one, but a real, complete, actual letting go of what was before. A genuine willingness to not carry it into what comes next. The reason beginnings feel so alive The reason new starts have that particular quality of freshness and possibility is not because something new has been added. It is because something old has been released. The new job feels fresh because you have left the old one behind. The new relationship feels open because you have genuinely closed the one that no longer served you. The first morning in a new home feels different because the previous home has been left, truly left, not just physically vacated, but emotionally released. And every morning, every single morning of your life has the potential to feel like a genuine beginning. Not because the circumstances have changed, but because sleep, properly received, is a genuine ending and a genuine beginning folded into a single act. To sleep well is to genuinely let go of today, to release it, not reluctantly, not partially, but completely and willingly, the way I release every previous position when I take the step that begins a new journey. And the morning that follows genuine sleep is a genuine beginning, fresh, open, available for whatever it brings, not preloaded with the unresolved weight of a day that was never properly closed. Tonight, I am teaching you the art of the genuine ending, which is the only way to arrive at the genuine beginning. Not the ending of your life, or your relationships, or your work, but the ending of today, the complete, willing, graceful release of this particular day into the past where it belongs, so that tomorrow can be tomorrow, not just a continuation of the same day that never really finished. Here is something I want to tell you about the white dog at my heels in the traditional image of my card, because most people overlook the dog, and the dog contains a teaching that I consider essential. The dog is my instinct, my body's wisdom, the part of me that knows things before my mind has formulated the question. It runs at my heels, not to hold me back, but to come with me, to bring the animal intelligence, the felt sense, the biological knowing that the rational mind sometimes leaves behind when it becomes very sophisticated and very serious. The dog knows things I cannot think my way to. It knows when to run and when to stop. It knows the scent of danger before danger is visible. It knows when it is genuinely safe to rest, not because it has analyzed the situation, but because its nervous system has assessed it at a level deeper than analysis. Your body is that dog. Your body knows when it is safe to rest. Your body knows when the day is genuinely done. Your body knows, in the heaviness of your limbs, in the softening behind your eyes, in the particular quality of tiredness that is not the same as the anxious alertness that sometimes masquerades as it, that this is the moment for sleep. The challenge for many people is that they have learned to override this knowing. They have trained themselves to dismiss the dog, to push past the body's signals in service of the mind's agenda, the task list's demands, the screen's pull, the anxiety's insistence that there is more to think about before rest is allowed. My advice to you tonight, my fool's advice, given from long experience of what it means to trust the instinctive knowing, is to let the dog lead. Your body is already telling you that it is time. The heaviness, the quieting, the readiness for stillness, these are not obstacles to be overcome. They are the dog at your heels, showing you the way. Follow it. I want to speak to you now about something that is central to understanding who I am, the concept of the beginner's mind, which in Zen Buddhism is called Shoshin, and which I embody completely. The beginner's mind is the mind that approaches every situation as though encountering it for the first time. Not because it has no experience, but because it has chosen not to let experience become the filter through which everything new must pass before being permitted entry. The expert's mind says, I know what this is. I have seen this before. I know how this works. And in saying this, it closes doors. The doors to the unexpected, to the genuinely new, to the possibility that this particular instance of a familiar category might be different from all the others. The beginner's mind says, let me see what this actually is. Let me meet it directly. Let me be surprised if surprise is what this moment offers. And in saying this, it keeps all doors open. Even when the situation is familiar, even when the experience is vast, even when the mind has more than enough data to predict what comes next. Shunryu Suzuki, the great Zen teacher, said something that I have held close for as long as I have understood what I am. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. Now I want to apply this directly to sleep, because I think it is one of the most overlooked sources of difficulty in falling asleep. Many people approach sleep as experts. They have a history with sleep, often a complicated one, sometimes a painful one, and they bring this history into the bedroom with them like a large, heavy bag of evidence. Last night was difficult. The night before was difficult. 3 months ago, I went through a period when sleep simply would not come, and I know, because I am an expert on my own sleep, that tonight might be the same. I know the pattern. I know how this goes. I know. But this knowing, this expertise about your own sleep, is one of the things most likely to produce the very difficulty it predicts. Because the nervous system that is monitoring for sleep difficulty is a nervous system that is alert, and alert nervous systems do not fall asleep easily. My advice, the fool's advice, is to approach this night as a beginner. Not pretending you have no history, not denying what has been difficult, but choosing, genuinely, deliberately choosing to meet this particular night as though you have never been here before. Because in a very important sense, you have not. This night, this specific arrangement of temperature and sound and feeling and the particular quality of tiredness you carry tonight has never existed before. It will never exist again. It is new. And the expert who knows how this goes might miss what this particular night is actually offering, which is rest, which is ease, which is the possibility that tonight might be different from the story you have been telling about your sleep. The beginner's mind can receive that possibility. The expert's mind has already decided it is not available. There is something about the white rose I carry that I want to tell you, because it is not a random detail, and it contains advice that I have never heard spoken directly, but that I have always felt to be true. The white rose is purity, but not purity in the sense of never having been touched, never having experienced difficulty, never having been through things that left marks. It is the purity of having moved through experience without letting it calcify, without letting the difficult things harden into identity, without building a permanent residence in the story of what has happened to you. I have been through everything the journey involves. I have been cold, confused, lost, afraid. I have taken steps that led nowhere and had to turn around and begin again. I have been misunderstood, underestimated, dismissed by those who confused lightness with shallowness. And I still carry the white rose. Not because none of it happened, but because I have a practice, a discipline actually, though it does not look like one from outside, of not letting what has happened to me become more real to me than what is possible next. The past is real, but it is not more real than the present. And the present is where I live, always, completely, with my full attention, which means that the residue of yesterday does not contaminate the texture of today. This is the advice I want to give you about how you carry your history through your days. Learn to hold your story lightly. Not to deny it, not to pretend it did not happen, but to hold it the way I hold everything I carry, lightly, in a small bundle over one shoulder, so that it does not prevent you from moving forward, from stepping off the cliff, from beginning again when beginning is called for. And tonight, in particular, hold today's story lightly enough to set it down entirely. Not forever, just for tonight, just for these hours when you do not need it, when it cannot help you, when carrying it only costs you the very rest that tomorrow will require. I want to share with you now something about the relationship between trust and rest that I understand in a way that very few entities do, because trust is, in many ways, the entire substance of what I am. I stand at the edge of the cliff with one foot lifted. Every version of me, in every deck of tarot cards ever created, across 5 centuries of imagery, stands in this posture, this impossible, ridiculous, magnificent posture of having already committed to the step before being able to see where it leads. This is not recklessness. Recklessness does not look at the sky. Recklessness does not carry a white rose. Recklessness does not have a dog, an instinctive, grounding, body-level companion running alongside it. What I embody is something more specific and more difficult than recklessness. It is trust in the process of living. The trust that the road appears as you walk it, that the resources arrive as they are needed, that the net appears when you fall, not before. And this particular kind of trust, the kind that acts before it can be certain, that begins before it can see the end, requires the same thing every single night. It requires the willingness to let go of the current position before the new one is guaranteed. To fall asleep is, neurologically and experientially, an act of trust. It is the voluntary surrender of consciousness, of awareness, of control, of the monitoring capacity that keeps you connected to the world. It requires trusting that the world will still be there when you return, that the things you cannot control while sleeping do not require your nighttime supervision, that the unconscious mind and the resting body are sufficient stewards of your safety for the duration of the night. And for people who have been through things that made the world feel genuinely unsafe, this trust can be the hardest thing in the world to practice. Not because they are weak, but because they learned at some point that staying alert was necessary, that vigilance was survival, that the moment you stopped watching was the moment things went wrong. If this is your history, I want to speak to you directly and carefully. The vigilance that protected you then is not protecting you now. It is costing you now, costing you the rest that would make you more capable, more resilient, more genuinely safe than any amount of nighttime alertness can make you. The fool's trust is not naive. It has been earned through exactly the kind of experience you have been through learning the hard way, that control is more limited than we think, that safety comes not from constant vigilance, but from the accumulated strength and clarity of a well-rested, genuinely resourced self. You are safer tonight when you sleep than you are when you lie awake monitoring a quiet room. The dog is there, your instinct, your body's knowing, and it will wake you if something genuinely requires your attention. But the chances are extraordinarily high that nothing will require your attention tonight. And your body knows this, even if the anxious mind has not yet accepted it. Trust the dog. Trust the body. Take the step. I want to tell you now about something that I find genuinely fascinating about the history of the tarot itself, because it contains a teaching about rest and renewal that is woven into the very structure of the cards. The tarot was not always a spiritual or psychological tool. In its earliest form, the decks created in 15th century northern Italy, it was a card game. A popular, sophisticated card game played by the nobility and the educated classes for entertainment and socialization. The symbolic system that the tarot carries, the deep archetypes, the journey of the soul, the 22 major arcana as a map of human psychological and spiritual development. This was not originally intended by the card makers. It was discovered, layered in by centuries of use, by the accumulated wisdom of the people who played with these images and began to find in them mirrors for their own inner lives. The tarot is, in a sense, an accidental depth, a set of images that were created for one purpose and found, over time, to carry a much larger one. The profundity was not designed in. It emerged through the attention of the people who engaged with it. And this tells you something important about the nature of meaning and discovery. That the most significant things in your life are often not the ones you planned for, not the carefully architected experiences, the deliberately arranged opportunities, the precisely managed outcomes. They are the card games that turned into spiritual maps, the conversations that lasted until dawn and became the foundation of lifelong friendships, the detours that became the actual journey, the losses that opened into unexpected gifts. And sleep, genuine, deep, surrendered sleep, is one of these things. People do not plan the insights that arrive in dreams. They do not deliberately engineer the morning clarity that follows a night of deep rest. They do not schedule the emotional processing that happens in REM sleep, the quiet transformation of raw experience into integrated understanding. These emerge, the way the tarot's depth emerged, from the simple act of showing up consistently, of giving the process what it needs, of trusting that something important is happening, even when you cannot see it directly. Sleep is a card game that contains a spiritual map. And tonight, as every night, the map is being drawn in your sleeping mind while you rest. Here is something I want to teach you about the relationship between lightness and depth, because people often assume these are opposites, and in assuming this, they make life much harder than it needs to be. I am called the Fool. I carry my belongings lightly. I step forward with something that looks, to serious eyes, like irresponsible joy. And people assume from this lightness that I cannot also be deep, that the one who travels light must be carrying nothing of substance. But this is exactly wrong. Lightness is not shallowness. Lightness is the quality of having processed what you carry, of having integrated the experiences, digested the losses, metabolized the difficulties, so that they no longer weigh what they once weighed. The person who carries everything heavily is not necessarily deeper than the one who travels light. They may simply be less finished with what they carry, still in the middle of the processing, still bearing the undigested weight of experiences that have not yet been fully met. And sleep is one of the primary places where this digestion happens. The emotional processing that occurs during REM sleep, the work your brain does in those rapid eye movement phases to separate the emotional intensity from the memory, to reduce the voltage of difficult experiences, to integrate what happened into the larger story of your life. This is the metabolism of experience. This is how the heavy becomes lighter. Not by being forgotten, not by being denied, but by being metabolized, processed at a level below conscious thought, transformed from raw sensation into integrated understanding that no longer needs to be carried in its original heavy form. Every night of good sleep makes you a little bit lighter, in the best sense of that word. Not shallower, not more avoidant, but genuinely less burdened, because the work of integration has been done that your conscious mind could not do alone. Tonight, let this process happen. Let your sleeping mind do the work that turns weight into wisdom, that turns difficulty into depth, that turns what was heavy into something you can carry lightly. The way I carry everything I need in a small bundle over one shoulder, without being diminished by the carrying. I want to give you now a piece of advice about beginnings that I consider the most practical thing I know. Something that sounds simple, but that I have found to be one of the most profoundly difficult and most transformative practices available to a human being. Begin again. Not once, not as a dramatic gesture, but as a daily, quiet, unremarkable practice. Every morning is a beginning again. Every conversation is a beginning again. Every breath. And this is something I want you to feel right now, in this very moment. Every single breath is a beginning again. The exhale releases what was. The brief pause between exhale and inhale, that tiny zero, that moment of complete emptiness, is the space of pure potential. And the inhale is the beginning. New air, new oxygen, new possibility. Again and again and again, 12 to 20 times per minute. without your help, without your management, without your needing to remember to do it. Your body has been practicing the art of beginning again since the moment you were born. And it does it with the same lightness I practice, without grief for the exhale that just passed, without anxiety about the inhale that is coming, without any of the drama that the mind adds to the transitions in your life. Just the exhale, just the pause, just the inhale, just the beginning again. Sleep is the great breath of your day, the exhale that releases everything today has been, the pause, the zero, the nothing that makes everything possible, in which you exist between one day and the next, the inhale that will be tomorrow morning, fresh and new and available, carrying none of the weight of what came before, except what the night has transformed into something lighter and more useful. You are at the pause now. You have already exhaled today. You are in the zero, the sacred, necessary, generative nothing between what was and what will be. Rest in it. It is safe here. It has always been safe here. Let me tell you something about the journey ahead, the one I am always at the beginning of, the one that never ends because it is always beginning, that I think will help you understand why sleep is not a retreat from life, but one of its most essential advances. Every step of the fool's journey, every card that follows mine in the major arcana, is an encounter with a different aspect of human experience. The magician, the high priestess, the emperor, the empress, the lovers, the chariot, strength, the hermit. Each of these represents something the traveler meets, a capacity to be developed, a lesson to be learned, a quality to be integrated before the journey can continue to the next stage. And here is what I have observed from my position at the beginning of every journey. The travelers who move through these stages most fluidly, who learn what each stage has to teach, and do not get stuck repeating the same lesson indefinitely, are the ones who rest properly between encounters. The lesson of the magician cannot be learned by someone too exhausted to recognize their own power. The wisdom of the high priestess cannot be received by a mind too cluttered with undone business to hear the quiet voice of inner knowing. The strength that the strength card offers cannot be accessed by a body too depleted to feel it. The journey requires rest, not as a pause between stages, but as the condition of readiness for what each stage actually demands. You cannot meet what is coming well if you have not recovered from what has just been. You cannot bring your full self to the next encounter if your full self has not been restored. And this is why I, the fool, who stands always at the beginning, carry such a strong teaching about rest. Because I know, better than any of the cards that follow me, what the journey ahead actually requires. And what it requires, first and always, is the traveler who arrives ready, Not perfect, not without uncertainty or fear or the weight of history, but genuinely rested enough to be present for whatever the next encounter brings. Tonight, you are restoring that readiness. Tonight, you are becoming the fool again, the one at the beginning, the one with the small light bundle, the one facing the open sky, ready for what comes next, because what came before has been properly closed. I want to share with you now something about the nature of trust in relationships, because it connects to everything I have been saying about trust and rest, and because I think it is one of the pieces of wisdom I carry that people most need to hear. The fool is often depicted as someone who trusts too easily, the innocent who will be taken advantage of, the open heart that will be hurt, the one who should be more careful, more suspicious, more protected. But I want to offer you a different view of this. The person who cannot trust is not safer than the person who trusts. They are merely more alone, cut off from the genuine connection that requires the vulnerability of trust to exist at all. I have been hurt by misplaced trust. I carry that knowledge in my small bundle. It is part of my history, but I have not let it calcify into a permanent policy of guardedness, because I have seen what permanent guardedness costs. It costs the connections. It costs the aliveness. It costs the capacity to be genuinely met by another person, which requires that you show them enough of yourself to actually meet. The advice I give you about relationships is the same advice I give you about sleep. The risk of openness is real, but it is smaller than the cost of closure. The vulnerability of genuine connection is real, but it is smaller than the loneliness of permanent self-protection. The possibility of being hurt is real, but the life lived in armor against that possibility is not the life you actually want. And just as you must open to sleep, must let the guard down, must allow the monitoring to stop, must trust the night to be safe, you must open to the people who deserve your openness. Not everyone, not recklessly, but genuinely, to those who have shown themselves worthy of what your openness contains. The dog knows who is safe. Your instinct knows who can be trusted with the parts of you that are genuinely worth trusting someone with. Listen to the dog. Trust the instinct, and then take the step. Here is something about the mountain I stand before, the cliff at the edge of which I am always depicted, that I want you to understand not as a metaphor, but as a practical teaching. The cliff is not the problem. The cliff is the opportunity. Without the cliff, without the edge, without the point at which the familiar ground runs out and what lies ahead becomes genuinely unknown, there is no journey. There is only the same field, walked again and again in the same direction toward the same horizon. Every genuine change in life, every meaningful transition, every real growth has a cliff in it. A moment when the ground you have been standing on is no longer sufficient for where you need to go. When the familiarity that has been comfortable has also been limiting. When the only way forward is through territory that cannot be fully mapped in advance. And the question the cliff asks, the question I have been answering in every version of my image for 500 years, is not whether to jump. It is whether to step, with intention, with awareness, with the dog beside you and the rose in your hand, into the genuine not knowing that is the only honest relationship with the future. Sleep is a cliff. Every night you stand at the edge of consciousness, at the point where the familiar ground of waking awareness runs out, and you are asked to step into territory that cannot be controlled or monitored or managed. And the question it asks you is the same question the cliff always asks. Do you trust the step? Do you trust that there is ground, or something better than ground, on the other side of the letting go? Do you trust your body to carry you through the night and return you in the morning to a version of yourself that is more complete than the one that went to sleep? I am standing beside you at the edge. I have made this step more times than can be counted, and I can tell you, from the accumulated wisdom of every fool who ever took it, that on the other side of the letting go, there is always something. Not always what you expected, not always what you wanted, but always something. Something that could not have been found by staying on the familiar side of the edge, by refusing the step, by choosing the known over the possible. I want to speak to you now about something that I think is one of the most important and most undervalued aspects of the fool's wisdom. The relationship between play and seriousness, and what it means for how you live. I am frequently dismissed as not serious, and it is true that I do not carry the gravity of the emperor, or the weight of the hierophant, or the sober authority of the justice card. I am lighter than these things. I laugh more easily. I am more willing to be wrong, more willing to look ridiculous in the service of genuine exploration. But I want to suggest to you that this lightness is not the opposite of seriousness. It is the condition of genuine seriousness, of the kind of engagement with life that can sustain itself over time without collapsing under its own weight. The person who is relentlessly serious, who cannot play, cannot laugh at themselves, cannot hold their own projects and concerns with some lightness, is not more committed to what matters than the fool. They are often less effective because they have lost the flexibility, the creativity, the genuine freshness of engagement that comes from being willing to not know, willing to be surprised, willing to find something funny even in the difficult places. Play is not the opposite of work. It is the state in which the best work happens, the state of genuine engagement without self-consciousness, of full investment without rigidity, of caring completely about the outcome while holding the caring lightly enough to adapt when the outcome requires adaptation. Children learn faster than adults, not because their brains are more capable. Adult brains are actually more powerful in many ways, but because they play, because they engage with each new thing as though it is genuinely interesting, genuinely worth their full attention, genuinely available to surprise them. This is the beginner's mind again. This is the fool's mind. And tonight, this advice applies to sleep as directly as to anything else. Approach this night with the playfulness of not knowing, not with the grim determination of someone who needs this to work and is afraid it won't, but with the curiosity of someone who is genuinely interested to see what the night brings, what dreams might come, what clarity might arrive, what the body might do when given genuine permission to do what it needs. There is something I want to tell you about the nature of potential, of the unrealized, the not yet, the possible, that I understand in my bones as the card that comes before all other cards. Potential is not a comfortable state. People often speak of potential as though it is purely positive, a gift, an advantage, something to be celebrated. And it is those things. But it is also a kind of pressure, a weight of what has not yet been made real, a sense of obligation to something that has not yet had the chance to express itself. Carrying potential is carrying a question, an unanswered, unanswerable, perpetually open question about what you are capable of, what you will do with what you have been given, what will become of all the seeds that have not yet found their soil. And this question, which is real and important and worth asking, is not a question for tonight. Tonight is not a night for potential. Tonight is a night for rest. And the difference between these two things, between the open, pressured, forward-looking energy of potential and the complete, present, inward orientation of rest, is one that the mind sometimes struggles to navigate. The mind that is always asking what it could become does not easily settle into what it is. The mind that is always reaching toward the unrealized does not easily rest in the actual. My advice, from the position of the one who embodies potential more completely than anyone, is to practice at the end of each day the deliberate setting down of the potential question. Not the abandonment of it, not the decision that it does not matter, but the recognition that the question will be better answered by a rested mind than by an exhausted one, and that the most productive thing you can do tonight for the future you are trying to build is to give your brain the sleep it needs to bring its full capacity to that building tomorrow. Tonight, you are not your potential. Tonight, you are simply yourself, here, now, lying in this quiet warmth, breathing slowly, releasing what the day has asked you to carry, and giving the night what it asks of you, which is nothing more and nothing less than your willingness to rest. I want to leave you with something that I consider the deepest teaching that the Fool has to offer. Something that takes a long time to understand, but that, once understood, makes almost everything easier. The step off the cliff is not the brave moment. This surprises people because it looks like the brave moment. It looks like the most terrifying thing. The moment of maximum exposure, of maximum vulnerability, of maximum unknowing. But the step off the cliff only requires courage if you are still trying to control the outcome. If you are stepping with the secret hope that you have calculated correctly, that the ground you cannot see is where you think it is, that the risk you are taking is actually not a risk because you have managed it into safety. The Fool's step is different. The Fool's step does not require knowing where the ground is. It does not require having calculated the odds. It does not require the confidence of the expert who has done this before and knows how it goes. The Fool's step only requires one thing: the genuine willingness to not know what comes next, and to be interested in finding out. Curiosity, not courage. Openness, not certainty. The willingness to find out, not the ability to predict. And tonight, this is all that sleep requires of you. Not the courage to surrender. Surrender is not a courageous act when it is genuinely willing. Not the confidence that the night will go well. Confidence requires evidence, and sleep does not come from evidence. Just the willingness to be curious about tonight. To approach the step into sleep with the same lightness with which I approach every cliff. Not knowing what is on the other side. Not needing to know. Genuinely interested in what the night will bring. The white rose in your hand. The dog at your heels, the sky open above you, the step already half taken. You have been here before, countless times, every night of your life, and every time the night has brought you back. Every time morning has arrived. This is the only evidence you need. Not that this particular night will be perfect, not that every dream will be peaceful, but that the night has always brought you back, and it will bring you back from this one too. I am stepping now. not away from you, not into some distant place where you cannot follow, but into the same quiet that is beginning to find you. The same settling, the same slowing, the same gentle recession of the day into the background where it belongs. I am the fool, and I am always at the beginning, which means I am always here, always available, always ready to begin again with you, whenever beginning is what is called for. And tomorrow morning, when the light returns and the day begins again, I will be at the edge with you, face turned toward the open sky, small bundle light on one shoulder, dog at heels, white rose in hand, ready for whatever the new day offers. But for now, for these beautiful, generous hours, there is only the pause, the zero, the nothing that is not nothing, but is the space in which everything is made possible. Your breathing has slowed. The space between your thoughts has widened. The urgency of the day has moved to a greater and greater distance. Not gone, but no longer here, no longer pressing, no longer requiring anything of you tonight. The step is already half taken. Your body has already begun its nightly journey into rest. You have already begun to let go, the way the exhale lets go, the way the cliff gives way to open air, the way the day gives way to night, naturally, inevitably, without resistance. I am here at the beginning of everything, including tonight, including this moment, this exact, specific, never to be repeated moment in which you are crossing from waking into sleep. The cliff is behind you now. The step has been taken. And what is on the other side is rest, complete, genuine, yours. Fall asleep with the feeling that tonight you have genuinely let go of today, that the night is already doing its quiet, essential work inside you, and that tomorrow you will wake as the fool always wakes, at the beginning, with the whole journey ahead, lighter than you were the night before.